Welcome back to Cornhusker Connection. I'm Brandon Shanahan, joined here with the fellas, Tyler Sprinkle and Brooke Byrne. Got a lot to talk about. We'll talk about Friday here quite a bit, but before that, did you guys have a good Thanksgiving?
Heck yeah.
No.
Let me ask you, what do you guys think of Thanksgiving food?
I love it. It's my favorite holiday.
It's S tier. I mean, what do you mean? What kind of question is that?
Well, so for a long time, I kind of thought it was overrated. I'm like, well, there's a reason why we only eat this food once a year because it sucks. But now that I've grown up, I'm on board, and I had that epiphany this Thanksgiving. I'm like, dude, this is awesome.
The reason you thought
Well,
it sucked is because you're probably smelling the big old dump in your pants.
yeah. The key word was you grew up
Yeah,
and you
Yeah.
figured it out.
Thank you. We all appreciate that.
yeah. Speaking of poopy pants,
Oh,
so, so I guess
this
I'll
could
just
go
get
so
started
many
with
different
this.
ways. I'm so scared.
So I'll just get started with this. For the most part, I'm very excited about where Nebraska football is. I think there's a lot of good things coming up. I think we got the right people in the right places. I think it's going to be a lot of fun here the next few weeks to see what happens in the transfer portal. But I will take a couple of minutes and just sit in my poopy pants here for a little bit. Um, I'm hurting because I don't know why this keeps happening to us, and I've said this a couple of times. We're just not good enough. I'm not even sure that's the case because you look at those first couple of losses and you think, well, if we just don't turn the football over in disastrous ways, we win those football games. Okay, well then you go to Wisconsin, you don't turn the football over, you get a 14-point lead, you check those boxes, and they still lose. It's because you're not making adjustments at halftime. It's because your defense is getting worn down. It's because special teams isn't setting yourself up in field position wise. And then you fast forward to Iowa, and it's like, okay, well now we're doing those things. We had great adjustments at halftime. We came out of the second half as a totally different football team. You could make the argument that we even won the special teams battle with how many field goals we blocked. Um, yeah, Alvano missed a field goal, but the punter was fine. Um, he stepped up pretty well, and we played exactly how Iowa finds ways to win games. We're going to put you in a corner. You're going to have to fight out of your own end zone several times during the game, string together lots of good plays. And if you slip up, we're going to make you pay for it. That's how Iowa has won 10 stupid games, despite the fact that they stink. They're not a good football team, but they won 10 games. So whatever, egg on my face. And we did that. And we even did exactly, it was the perfect Iowa formula because we backed them up and they still have an opportunity to drive down the field, kick a field goal and win the game. But we're putting so much pressure on them to be perfect every single play. We're suffocating and they do it. They throw in interception from their awful quarterback, probably trying to throw it to an awful wide receiver or an awful tight end with an awful play call. And we're there and we make the play. And now all of a sudden, it feels like the entire last 4 years is turning around all right in front of my eyes. Like this is exactly how we lose games. And now they're losing this game because of it. And I guess what? It doesn't matter because the very next play, we give it right back. Defense gives up a 20-yard run for some reason. Their backup kicker kicks a field goal about the same distance that our, you know, five-star kicker missed earlier in the game. Just want to throw that out there. That stinks. And now, for what feels like probably the fifth time this season, I felt like we were the better football team, and we still lost the football game.
I mean, none of what you said was crazy or even wrong, I don't think, but as much as we wanted to, jerk Rule off for going 4-0 in the month of October, I mean, man, you really laid an egg in the month of December or November. That's just as alarming as, it was good that we went 4-0 in October because we were in every single one of those games. And the loss to Michigan State stings even more, looking back at that 4-game stretch. We really did need to get our sixth win there. And now we were saying it at the time, the extra month of practice that we would have gotten from the bowl game is just kind of gone. And when you have a young roster like we do, that really just blows.
I'm choosing, and I'm bummed, but I'm choosing to look at this more of a celebration of life. The season that we had, the ups, the downs, the new life that has been brought into this program, instead of choosing to look at this in a negative way. And I know that it's hard not to look at it in a negative way because this season was a failed season. Um, but I still think that Matt Rule is the best hire that we could have had. The players showing up, the defense showing up the way that it did, all great things. The improvement that we saw week to week, the only thing that did not change is the inability to just finish out games. And I know that it hurts everybody there. Hopefully, everybody comes back and remembers that feeling so that way it doesn't happen again. And that's how I'm choosing to look at it instead of, damn, this season sucked.
And I'm right there with you. I think that there's a lot of good to take away from it, even though it was a fundamental failure to lose your last 4 games in the way that they did. But it, I guess the bright spot about losing all these games so horribly in the way that we did is that we're still just right there. I mean, we could have won 6 games, 7, 8. We were right there, knocking on the doorstep for a lot of those games. And I guess that's better than if the whole team just takes a step back talent wise and just they're not better than any of these teams that beat up on them. So yeah, that's a win because it feels like we can turn the corner at any time, and that's what keeps me up at night, gives me a little bit of hope.
All right, outside of, Rule turning the locker room around, where I am really glad that no one's hopped in the portal yet and we're keeping all this youth. It does seem like a happier locker room, and these guys really are on board with what Rule's doing. So that's a huge win. But as far as, wins and losses, to say Rule's done anything yet is crazy to me because you missed a bowl game. Northwestern's coach, an interim guy after, the wildest offseason firing, literally got them to 6 wins in a bowl game, and that's a far less talented roster than we had. So there's guys doing it in year one. So for me to, give Rule any kind of credit outside of, keeping the guys in the locker room happy, like he's got to just win games because 5-7 is just not getting it done. It's the same thing we get on Frost for, losing the close ones. So I know this is his MO in year one of rebuilds, but my God, was there a missed opportunity to go win the Big Ten West in your first year? So, I mean, that's how I look at it.
Yeah, and I don't think that that's a wrong way to look at it. I've been saying it all year. Or not saying it, but I've been talking about what Matt Rule said. There has not been a commitment to winning games, not winning games, there's not been a commitment to not losing games in that locker room for so long. He's trying to teach those guys how to win games. And I do still think that that's a very important part. And you could have all the talent in the world, but if you can't show up in the big spots, as we saw plenty of times this year, that's something that can be fixed, and I think is on the way to being fixed.
Yeah, and you're right. Fact of the matter is this season was a fundamental failure. When you come out and it looked like you were turning a corner after beating like Illinois and getting to 5-3, and then to lose those 4 very winnable games in the typical Husker fashion that you do, that is a failure. And that is very disappointing. And any sense of optimism does come from faith, and optimism is just we got the right guys in the right place. Obviously, the results don't show that, but and also I have to believe because otherwise it's just a miserable way to be. And if it doesn't work out, I'll be sad then. But I could be delusional and happy now, and I'll take that. I'll take that indeed.
The other thing was like you guys said, it is kind of on the players to not lose games because they're the ones out there playing. But some of the game, like the game management stuff and just the play calls by Satterfield were crazy bad. Like the last interception that Purdy threw that, got Iowa in position to win. Why, with 30 seconds left, are we throwing a 6-yard like curl route or in cut route in the middle of the field when we didn't have any timeouts? Like if you're trying to win the game there, like if you weren't trying to win the game, just run the ball and go to overtime. But if we were trying to win, why is that the fucking play call? It's just a lot of the stuff that we're doing on offense doesn't make sense, and it doesn't feel like we're helping out young, inexperienced quarterbacks. And I mean, Jeff Sims, is an anomaly, and he's probably going to transfer out just because, I mean, I don't think he wants to be a backup here after playing so bad, but I think we need to go out and get a QB coach. And I guess in Rule's postseason presser, that was the plan originally, and it just didn't work out that way. But yeah, we need a coach dedicated to our QB room.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it, because there are a lot of things that I think we can fix. I don't just want to be the guy who's like, oh, well, the offense stinks, fire the offensive coordinator. Like, that doesn't. It feels counterintuitive to root for my favorite football team to have 4 offensive coordinators in 4 years, but it does feel like a situation where I feel a lot more comfortable if I hear Matt Rule here in a couple of weeks say, hey, we turned over every rock to improve every aspect of this offense and this defense, and we're doing everything we can to make sure we got the best guys in place. He won't say this, but I need him to have looked for a new offensive coordinator, see what those options are, or a quarterback coach, or somebody who can help these guys develop. Because that was kind of the big thing that was so concerning to me with Heiner Carberg, is that I thought he did play pretty well those first couple of weeks. Granted, competition was what was drastic, but by the end of his tenure, he was making mistakes that he was not making those first 3 weeks. So not only was he not developing and getting any better, he was getting worse, significantly worse. And then, of course, Jeff Sims, we're very excited about him coming in. He's got a lot of good tape, a lot of good highlights, and he comes in and looks like a shell of the worst case scenario that Jeff Sims could be. And then he gets another opportunity like 2.5 months later, if it's a matter of like speed of the game or the offense. And it wasn't. He comes in and looks exactly the same as when he got benched after the injury. And I mean, Chuba played pretty well, I think, but also we only got to see him in 2 games, so we didn't get a whole lot of opportunity to see him regress in the same way that those other guys did. So that's definitely one thing that I want. If not major overhaul, it's got to be looked at very closely.
Yeah, I'm on the same page as you want consistency because that helps people improve. But when somebody shows you that they're not the guy, then they're not the fucking guy. So where is that line where, okay, yeah, he just had a bad year, as opposed to this guy fucking stinks, get him out?
Yeah.
Well, I think that line is, can I get somebody better than this? Because there's a non-zero chance you fire him and then you get worse. And that's what I don't want to happen.
I couldn't imagine being any worse than we were on offense this year. I really couldn't.
And real quick to jump in right there, I wonder how differently this season would have gone if Purdy was 100% healthy right from the get-go. Because it sounded like Jeff Sims' leash was so long because they didn't want to put Harburg in. And I guess the opportunity to put him in against Northern Illinois, to kind of get his feet wet and build his confidence up, presented itself because Sims was playing so bad. But if we had Purdy available, like he showed you at the end of the year, he can make some plays and some throws. He is a Division I quarterback and a Division I talent. The thing with Harburg was, I think he's a Division I athlete. I don't think he's a Division I quarterback. So if he's going to stay, I would expect a position change for him. But his throwing motion just has so many problems, and he would make some really difficult throws, but like the easy ones, like he would sail and throw behind guys. I think it was just worst case scenario. And like Tyler said, it's hard to imagine we're worse next year. And if it is, then I think you got to fire someone, and it's probably Satterfield.
Quick.
Yeah.
Quick.
Yeah, and I guess the the brightest timeline to me is that these guys get another opportunity to develop in the system that's already in place, where it feels like you're putting them in kind of a tough spot, in a situation where we probably don't get a super talented quarterback all of a sudden showing up in the locker room come springtime. I the brightest timeline is that they get another year to develop, but that's the key word. They have to develop. Where I'm not too
Yeah.
sure if that's going to be the case, but that's what I'm rooting for at least.
And, a part of that is, another year, another offensive coordinator for Harburg and Purdy who have been here. Obviously, Sims learning that on the fly is tough, but at its base, you have to go out there and make plays no matter what system you're in and what have you. And we just didn't at the quarterback position, and that's a really bad position to not be good at.
And it kind of felt like at times that was our worst position on offense. The
Was
offensive line I thought got a lot better. The
Yeah.
wide receivers, even as decimated as that wide receiver and running back room came in, to have our quarterback be the worst player on the field feels like a losing formula.
Yeah. I mean, it was the worst position on our team overall, I think. And if we had, Adrian Martinez or even Casey Thompson, we would have probably won the West with how good we were everywhere else. And our offensive line stepped up big time towards the end of the year and gave us a chance. But it'll be interesting to see how we fix some of the offensive problems going into next year, because there's a real chance we start 6 or 7-0 if we can just be average across, statistically across the country.
I think it's also worth mentioning. I think we're in a spot to get a lot better just by the guys that we're going to have coming back from injury, assuming that they do in fact come back. It seems like everybody and their mother's in the transfer portal already. I guess none from Nebraska, but that domino could start at any time. But I mean, at one point we're down 8 offensive starters, and we're not known for having a extremely talented, offense to begin with. So now you're losing so talented guys and having to replace them with, the Nebraska All Metro team at wide receiver. It doesn't feel like a good formula. So hopefully that's just something that just by attrition and staying healthy, we see a huge bump in the roster.
Huge. And with the incoming recruits that we have, huge help on the offensive line. Obviously, we got Bricks, the top O lineman from Hawaii, the top guy from Nebraska. I think we are going to improve just because of the talent. And defensively, the two DNs, Prince Will and Cam Lenhart, are going to be freaks next year. And I expect a big jump from them with how much they played this year. So, and obviously, Nash and Ty Robinson coming back is never a bad thing.
I didn't expect that, Ty Robinson, to be coming back, but I'm very happy about it.
Huge.
That's great news. Also, it seems like Tony White's going to be around.
Yep.
Yeah.
It sounds like we kept him from going to USC, which is huge. But
yeah, I mean,
Which
about 12 hours ago, it doesn't feel like that, but here we are.
In my mind, it doesn't make any sense for him to make that lateral move, because you're always going to look best with the guys that you've had instead of starting anew with guys that you don't know anything about. So if he really wants to make the head coaching jump, which I think he should and he can, why would you not stick with who you know, the personnel you know, and the scheme that you know, instead of trying to jump laterally and then make the head coaching move there? It doesn't make any sense to me. So I'm glad that if he sticks around, I'll be really happy about that.
Yeah. The USC job's a shitstorm right now. And like you said, that's almost a worse move with the pressure and the overhaul of that would take. And like you said, the defense he has here is only going to get better because outside of a few guys, like we bring back so many pieces. Obviously, we lose Henrich and Newsome, and I think Reimer is gone. I'm not sure about that one. I think
He
he's
hasn't said anything yet.
Could he come back, or is he out of eligibility? I'm confused on
Man,
that.
it's tough to keep up these days.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh! I mean, if Reimer comes back, we're gonna be a force.
I would love if Isaac Gifford comes back, but I think he has a real shot at being like a day 2 NFL
Yeah.
draft pick.
And I'm
then,
not sure what coming back would do for his
yeah,
stock almost. So, like you said, if he has a chance to get drafted, obviously, like he has to go.
right.
But
And I'll never be mad at anybody for that.
no,
That's why it's so surprising that Robinson's coming back. Like it doesn't make.
Well, it's
I
just
mean,
him and Nash's numbers weren't that good, and they were. I feel like they kind of got gypped because we are rotating guys so much. But I think if they put up better numbers next year, both of those guys have a shot at getting drafted.
yeah.
But lots going on. I also wanted to talk about the coaching carousel that's been going on. A couple of big names get hired, but the first one I want to talk about, which I think is the funniest, is Texas A&M's whole situation. And by the way, I think they got it right. I would tell you that they need a ball coach. Right? They got the flashy recruiter, got great recruiting classes, but you need it. You're going to get that with the resources that they have and the proximity to Texas and this and that. You need a ball coach for first and foremost. And Mike Elko is a ball coach. That checks that box. It is just interesting to me that they had Mark Stoops seemingly on a plane to College Station, then decided to not go with the coach who's found success at a basketball school with limited resources, and then to go hire a coach who's had success at a basketball school with limited resources, and you could argue has accomplished less in that role at that school. So the how he got there is funny to me, but at the end of the day, I think it's a good hire for him.
I think Elko and Stoops are literally the same person. Elko's is probably just a little more flashy because he turned around Duke so fast, and Elko was, the D coordinator for some of those good Texas A&M teams from 18 to 21. But them thinking they're too good for Mark Stoops is crazy. So I'm Mark Stoops. I'm happy I dodged that bullet, but I mean, how dumb is those Texas A&M fans?
And it's just interesting that you would wear that they would riot and be so upset with this coach, with Mark Stoops, but then be okay with Elko. Because as soon as it was clear that Stoops wasn't coming, I figured, oh, they're going to make a huge pivot. They're probably going to whiff at it. But then they end up with what I would call Mark Stoops light.
Yeah. Honestly, they're same.
Yeah. So I thought that was interesting. Very funny to see that all play
I don't
out.
really know much about Mike Elko, other than the fact that he turned around Duke, as Brooks said, so fast. I do, though, remember wanting Stoops to come to Nebraska when we fired Scott Frost. In my mind, it was Fickle, Stoops, Leopold, and then Matt Rule.
That's right. I totally forgot about that.
Looking back now, I do believe that we made the correct hire in hiring a program builder instead of the flashy guy that can recruit well, which is always nice. But you get those guys in, you have 4 or 5 star talent, but if you're not coaching them to be good in your system, then it's kind of all for naught. So, I don't really even know how that all went down. So they took a poll. Like, did Texas A&M take a poll, and that's how
I
they
think
decided?
they just got the vibe from the psychos down in College Station.
Okay.
And obviously that wasn't the sole reason, but I think a big part of it is the people who donate money were kind of scoffing at that idea as well, and then Mark Stoops had that tweet where he was like, I'm taking myself out of consideration, which, I mean, is crazy.
Yeah.
Where he's like, I'm hearing all this bullshit. Like, I'm not even the head coach yet, and I'm hearing all this bullshit about these people don't want me, so I'm going to go ahead and say fuck you and take myself out.
You see, now
is
And
that
he would.
yeah, that would make
he
sense
would-
to me. Is that if Mark Stoops saw the chaos and was like, I'm not getting into that.
Yeah.
They're going to build a statue for me here in Kentucky. But for
He would be so dumb to leave Kentucky because he is in a fantastic spot. I mean, he wins 8, 9 games a year. I mean, he's going to have a job for life there. I mean,
and
he's
he
in a
will.
fantastic spot.
I think the allure of him leaving is Kentucky really doesn't commit a ton of money to their football program, and that's what he was saying is like people like he has them, ranked at some point in the season just about every year, which speaks to how good of a coach he is. But the Kentucky fan base wants him to compete with Georgia when they don't monetarily want to compete with Georgia. Georgia's buying guys left and right, and Kentucky can't and won't do that right now. So it's like you guys are just going to have to be happy with what's going on because this is the best we're going to get in this NIL era if we're not going to dump big money into this.
And you could even make the case that they're going to get worse as that gap widens, especially adding schools like Texas and Oklahoma, who with deep pockets to the Southeastern Conference. It does make a lot of sense for me to see him take that leap now, especially a school with the riches of Texas A&M.
Exactly.
But yeah, they're
Just
going to
not
build a statue for him.
definitely not the school you want to go to with all those fucking psychotic people there.
What a bunch of psychos.
The one that I'm really interested in talking about, though, and hearing your guys' opinion is the JMU coach. I don't know how to pronounce his name, so I'm going to let Brandon do that. Going to
Kurt
Indiana.
Cignetti?
Signetti. Okay.
I think so.
Okay. Well, if it's wrong, blame Brandon. That's not
Yeah.
on me. I didn't say it. Brandon said it. Thank you, Brandon.
Brother, I mean, I listed the whole Seattle Seahawks roster last night and didn't even answer your question. So it wouldn't be the biggest blunder this week. This seems almost like the best hire I've seen so far. And it was curious to me when they got rid of Tom Allen, I think his name was, because he had $20 million buyout. And you don't think of schools like Indiana dishing out that kind of buyout money, but if they had this guy in their crosses with the job he's done at JMU, that seems like a home run to me.
So my question here, sorry, Brooke, let me just ask you this before you answer or before you talk about it. What is Michigan State's coaching looking like? Because would you not prefer to go to Michigan State over Indiana? Is that not even a possibility?
Well, they Michigan State got Jonathan Gannon.
No, Jonathan
No, that's
Smith.
not his name. That's it.
Smith. The Oregon
from
State
Oregon
guy.
State.
Oh, okay. So I missed that. That's why I was confused.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. That would be a
Yeah.
I mean, both of those are great hires. I think the Jonathan Smith hire from Michigan State was a win after what happened with what's his face? Why am I blanking on his name?
Mel Tucker,
Yes, goddamn.
Midnight Mel.
But I almost think the Indiana hire is better than that one. With if he can do that now, there are times when you see the jump from the Group of Five school to a Power Five school, especially with Penn State, Ohio State, and Michigan all on. Well, actually, we're not even doing sides anymore. I forgot about that. I think that this hire makes Indiana significantly better right away, and both of those coaches, if they want to compete right away, are going to have to jump into the portal and whatnot. But in a couple years, I feel like Indiana and Michigan State are going to be big players in the Big Ten.
Well, big players feels like a stretch for Indiana.
I don't know about big players, but if it
very
works
much
out,
improved,
like 7-8 wins every year.
Yeah, kind of like what we've seen from Rutgers over the last couple of years with Greg Schiano. They got 6-7 wins now.
Yeah, and
There you
that's
go.
another guy I think should get a lifetime contract. What he's doing at Rutgers,
For sure. Curious if where those jobs rank as far as like stepping stone jobs. Like, why isn't Greg Schiano get looked at for some of these?
I think it's just the style he plays.
Yeah.
It's not flashy. It's not like I don't know if he's ever going to compete for a Big Ten championship or national championship, but he'll get you 7, 8, 9 wins every year.
Just one last thing I wanted to give a shout out to Houston. I think they are they're looking in the right places. I thought Dana Holgerson came in and did an okay job in their first year in the Big 12. Obviously, none of those teams did very well making that jump. But Houston, I feel like they did okay. They picked up a couple of big wins, but they still decided to let him go. And they're looking at coaches. I think the last betting favorite I saw was Cliff Kingsbury. They also saw Gary Patterson on that list, Jeff Traylor, Willie Fritz from Tulane. And I think with Houston, especially as much of a Big 12 fan as I am, that's a program that doesn't just need a good ball coach. They need somebody to inject life into that program. And I think any of those coaches that I just listed off are huge program life injectors. Because I mean, you look week in, week out, it doesn't matter who they're playing. You can get in that stadium for less than $10, which is not a good place for anything.
And I think the fact that Tulane's quarterback already is like thinking about, is he already in the portal? I think he said his plan is to hop in after the year.
Yeah, it's tough to keep up.
But it sounds like if he's hopping in the portal, he knows something. Probably Willie Fritz is leaving, so that would make a lot of sense for him to jump into the Big 12 job with Houston.
Yeah, and especially, I mean, both of those guys, I'm surprised they're not getting more action as far as like these bigger jobs go. I mean, I guess, all right, I guess everyone's getting good coaches around, but yeah, I mean, it seems like they're due for that jump.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. And the way Dion's losing commits, I keep saying this, it feels like he's leaving, but I don't know where he would go.
Yeah, I don't know. I think this is all just kind of blowing up. He is the sports person of the year, so
At 4-8, 4-7 right now, Jesus Christ!
got to get Scott Frost a couple of them things.
God,
That's
wait.
the threshold. So I'll defend it a little bit. I think I obviously don't think that they mean like sports coach of the year, but just the impact he's had to Colorado as a figurehead and brought a lot more eyeballs to college football in that little university out west. That probably has more impact to do than what he was able to accomplish on the field with all that roster turnover going from the worst team in the Pac-12 to the worst team in the Pac-12. Yeah, I don't think there's much good to say about him as a football coach, which one of my predictions with how this was going to go was we're going to figure it out pretty quickly if it's going to work or not. It's either going to snowball and they're going to get 6 wins in year one, keep building upon that, now develop a recruiting class behind it, or it's going to look like a fraudulent salesman and it's all going to fall apart. And if I had to bet, I would bet more so on the latter at this, from what we've seen from these decommitments, from just the on-field success the last couple of weeks of the season. It's not looking great.
Well, I think both can be true, what you just said. I think some commits can look and say, wow, this guy's just trying to sell me a product. And other guys can value the knowledge because he's a very knowledgeable coach, I believe. They can see the value in his coaching ability and still want to come there and deal with all of the hoopla that may come with that.
But let's not get it twisted. Dion is very much about himself and the fact that Shador would be a first-round draft pick this year if he came out. And it seems like Dion has a lot to do with him staying for another year because it's like if you're a first-round draft pick, what are you going back to college for? You know what I mean? Like there's not much you can improve, and if he gets hurt, it's like he's playing himself out of his NFL career a little bit. Maybe the chances, the next draft he might be the number 1 overall pick, but passing up first round money is not usually a good thing.
But I think now it's a completely different landscape where these guys are, like Shadur, are already making millions of dollars in college. So the thought of leaving that to take that jump to the NFL, where you see it every year, these guys come out and like Bryce Young, I mean, number one overall pick. He does not look good. So you take that risk out of the equation because you're already making millions of dollars a year. Having that extra stability in college to then jump to the NFL, get your first year contract. What is it? 4 years of the 5th year option or something like that. Maybe it's 5 years of the 4 years of the 5. Yeah, I think. So you just kind of elongate your money making opportunity there, just in case when you go to the NFL it does not work out.
And, more power to him if that's how he's looking at it. But it's like, he needs to take out an insurance policy now, or if, like Kyler Murray did, if he gets hurt, then it stops after this year. But
Yeah, I think the most wholesome way that this works out is for both Shooter and Dion is they sense an opportunity to build a unique legacy where, with Dion doing this whole unorthodox style of recruiting, dipping in the transfer portal as heavily, telling kids to go pack their bags, and I think it's, and I don't know, but I would imagine that with their family being in the situation they're in, I can't imagine money's too big of a of a motivation. Um, so I think that there is an avenue where they're just like, I can do something really special here and rebuild this program. I get to rebuild it with my dad, above all else, my brother as well. All the other Sanders are around that program as well, getting to build something special here. And then, of course, I'll go to the NFL, be a first-round draft pick, win a bunch of Super Bowls for the Denver Broncos, or however that works out. Maybe the Chiefs need a quarterback. Maybe he ends up in Kansas City. I don't know, but that's me, at least, is the wholesome avenue of that. And I could be totally wrong. They could just be in it for the money, but how much money do you need?
yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. I think what you're saying does make sense. But I wonder if it's more so Dion is wanting Shitter's help in rebuilding the program instead of having to go out into the portal and find a quarterback. And then turns out they're Jeff Sims. So I think he knows what he has in his son, and I think that dynamic is being father son makes him more coachable for sure.
Yeah.
And just wanted correct Brandon there. The Chiefs are good on quarterback for the next 15 years, in case you forgot. But
No.
All right.
I mean, the vision runs through
No.
Kansas City for
Right.
15 more years. So
I'm just just thinking off the cuff here is what it is.
yeah. What a fucker.
So I do kind of want to get into our last full week of the pick'em. It was kind of an interesting one. I don't remember picking why I would pick Oregon State over Oregon. That doesn't seem
You
very
did.
foresighted to me. I did. I don't know why I missed, but overall, yeah, pretty good weeks. Tyler had to get a little frisky, of course, with some of his picks, but that's a final
Shoot.
standing. So Brooke
That's too
came on
bad.
top. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Sure is a shame.
Shit. No, I got sorry, I got all this wrong. All this wrong. Don't look at it. But that's how it shaped up. I guess not too many big surprises. The Ohio State Michigan game, I ran through a couple of circles throughout that process, because at the time of our last recording, I bet on Ohio State to figure it out. And then by the end of the the Bookie Brook deadline, I bought a touchdown's worth of points for Michigan, because I thought they were going to run away with it. That was all wrong. I was all wrong about that game. Oregon State still doesn't make sense to me. I can't remember why I would do that. And then Louisville. I mean, what do you do? What do you do?
I mean, what a blunder there. I mean, talk about fumbling the bag. They were staring down the barrel of a New Year's Six game. Now it was looking like Florida State has the upper hand on them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one way to put it. How did you
Playoff
guys?
participant, Florida State.
Yeah, we'll see. So I guess now that the college football playoff is kind of taking shape here. What are you guys rooting for this weekend? What's the best case scenario
Chaos.
for you guys?
I mean, obviously that Florida State's in, but that's pretty much, I feel like, a given now, no?
Unless they lose.
Well,
So my perfect scenario is Texas loses, Georgia wins, Michigan wins, Oregon beats Washington in a nail biter. They somehow get the 4th spot. So
you're fucking
Washington,
ridiculous.
Oregon, Michigan, Georgia.
They haven't put one team in fucking this century, and you want them to get 2 in.
Hey, he's a Big Ten guy here. He's rooting for these future Big Ten teams to make an
Jesus.
impact here. Would you care about the Big Ten, Brooke?
God,
They
Brooke has
still-
just a huge dump in his fucking pants all the time.
I mean, I wish I could fart rainbows and give out scenarios that are never going to happen, but Jesus. They still have the Pac-12 stink on them. They're not even a part of the Big Ten yet.
The best conference in the league this year?
I mean, not if they don't get a team in.
Joel Cloud was throwing out the notion that if Oregon wins, that opens up the door for if Georgia and Alabama
Texas.
win, that opens up the door for Alabama and Texas to sneak in. I don't think that's how it would actually go down, but his logic is you can't leave out the SEC champion. I think he can. He knows more than I do, so it is what it is. And then you can't put in Alabama over a one-loss Texas.
To beat him head to head. Yeah.
That's the whole thing is I think there's still a very real scenario the Pac-12 gets left out just because of Texas's win over Alabama, no matter the play, like how it plays out. I feel like if Florida State loses, the Pac-12 is for sure in. But that's the only way they're for sure in my mind, because I don't know. I think if Alabama loses to Georgia in the SEC championship, then maybe Oregon would jump Texas. But if Alabama wins and Texas wins, it's hard to not put both of those teams in.
But I do think if they have to pick between Alabama and Texas, it's not right, but I do think that they'll pick Alabama.
There's just no way. There's just no way that would happen.
They keep saying the 4 best teams.
Well, Texas is better than them. They beat them.
That was 3 months ago. These are 2 different teams. Alabama's gotten so much better. They just beat.
Then what's the point of even playing the games if
there's not? I mean, you're right. Just these fuckers have such an SEC hard on. It seems impossible for me to imagine they leave a team out.
It would. People keep looking at all of these external factors, the SEC bias, and obviously the big one with Florida State, Jordan Travis being out. I don't think you can. They say it might take into account those things. I don't think you can, because regardless of what a team looks like, if they win all of their games and they're in a Power 5 conference, you have to put them in. Also, the reason Texas schedules Alabama is for a situation like this. Now, if they put in Alabama ahead of Texas, you set there's no reason for anybody to schedule good non-conference games. Because of what you're saying, Brandon, it was 3 months ago and it's an SEC team. If they leave Texas out over Bama, then there should be no reason Texas ever schedules a Power 5 team non-con ever again.
But then couldn't you also make the case that, well, now there's no reason for Alabama to ever schedule a game like that because
Exactly. No one.
they did exactly what the committee wants them to do. They scheduled a non-conference team. They even went on the road last year, and then because they weren't perfect because of that one blemish, now they're left out of the playoff.
Will be better. Win all of your games.
You're right.
I do think that there is a certain thought process of putting the best 4 teams in the playoffs. And this is going to sound biased, and I don't mean it to sound biased, but I don't believe that Florida State is one of the best 4 teams without Jordan Travis.
And that is a fair thought. But I keep going back to the year Ohio State with Cardale Jones. Everybody bitched and moaned about them getting in the 4th spot. And then they went and turned around and won the whole fucking thing. It's not about the 4 best teams. It's about the 4 most deserving teams. And if we keep playing into the narrative of who we think the best 4 are, then all we're going to get every year is Georgia, Bama, and then whatever random 2 teams ESPN wants to jerk off that year. And right now it's Oregon because of Bo Nix's potentially a Heisman candidate. And obviously the love they give Texas, but it should be the 4 most deserving teams. Like if you win every game on your schedule, then you deserve to be in if you're a Power 5 team.
So taking out Florida State, like let's say they're not even in contention, you don't think that Oregon is deserving of getting into the playoffs?
To an extent, I would, in my mind, I would put them behind both Bama and Texas because obviously they won more. Their conference was better this year. They had more ranked wins, but a lot of those wins now are kind of falling off. Like Oregon State's not looking as good. I forget the other ones. But they also struggled with Texas Tech, who is like the 9th best team in the Big 12 this year. And Texas manhandled them. So obviously you have to look at common opponents and how you handle that. Yes, theirs was on the road and at the beginning of the year, but people soon forget that Texas Tech had them on the ropes up until that late fumble 6 or pick 6, whatever it was.
Yeah, I agree. It definitely shouldn't just be the 4 best teams. I think that's a fine tiebreaker where if you have 2 teams who are like Oregon and Texas, if they're one-loss
Yeah.
conference champion, then all right, well, who's the better team? Let's not overthink
I
it.
wouldn't. I would. If it was Oregon and Texas, we're deciding between the last one in. You could argue until you're blue in the face. That one wouldn't upset me as much, but leaving out, obviously, I mean, leaving out a Power 5 team because their quarterback got hurt is crazy to me because
It's
you
nuts.
have the Ohio State blueprint from 2014 or 15, whatever it was. So
I do still think that strength of schedule means a lot, though, too.
And whose do you think is better, Oregon's or Texas?
Probably Texas. I was more so saying about Florida State, and it's not to their fault because they just kind of play in a bad conference, especially with Clemson having an off year. So their best win coming against an LSU team in week 1 that has fallen off a little bit.
They're still a top 15 team, though.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
and I would
your
be
strength of schedule is like 88th.
I would still be comfortable giving Florida State the benefit of the doubt because they
Yeah,
did schedule
and I get that. I
Utah
do
and
get that.
Florida, where they, Alabama scheduled, not Alabama, but Georgia scheduled 2 cupcakes in their 4 non-conference games. So there's that. I think it would set a very slippery slope if they did not put Florida in. Because also, side note, I think if they go out, they beat Florida on the road like they did. I think it was on the road. They go out and beat Florida on the road. Florida's obviously not very good, but for your first ever start, that's tough. and then you go and beat Louisville and then in a conference championship game. That to me shows that this guy is serviceable. Well,
Exactly. And that's what I
obviously not
was.
Jordan Travis.
I'm glad
And,
you said that because
and it's
that's what I was going
also
to point out.
and it's also such a slippery slope because what happens if Ohio State wins last week, but Marvin Harrison Jr. gets hurt? Well, now Ohio State's best player is injured. Well, what happens if it's a left tackle or another
That's not the
valuable
same thing.
player?
That's not the same thing, Brandon. You know it. God
It's
damn
the
it.
best player is getting hurt. That's what it. When and you're right, it's not the same thing. Quarterback is a much more valuable position, but who's to say that that's not the next progression in this? Where if you just stop it and be like, hey, this team went undefeated in a Power 5 schedule. They've scheduled two Power 5 contests. I think they were actually both on the road. I think they went to Utah as well. No, Florida scheduled
Wait.
Utah. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Well, it was a home and home, but yeah.
Yeah. That to me, that would be the worry of this is what that could
But
evolve into.
if this
Who's the
was
healthier
if the
team should
roles,
never be.
my whole thing is if the roles were reversed and just say Florida State had the SEC tag on them, or you just switch the names. If this was Georgia, do you think they would leave them out if they were undefeated and they were in the SEC? Absolutely not.
And the reason for that is because it's a better conference,
Allegedly.
in my opinion.
What makes them a better conference though?
Because the playoff committee says that they are, and they
Year in
rank
and year
teams
out,
like Tennessee.
year in and
as a
year
region.
out, when the SEC, when they have their bowl game matchups, they're the worst in the Power Five. And that, I mean, obviously, some things change with that. It's just that they're super top heavy. Like the SEC, outside of their best four teams, is a dog shit conference. You have Vanderbilt, you have Mississippi State. Who else? Florida is bad. I mean, they get propped up by Georgia and Bama a lot. And honestly, even LSU and Ole Miss.
Are you saying, and I'm just asking, are you saying that the ACC is a better conference than the SEC?
I'm saying we won't know that until all the bowl games are played this year.
Okay.
I wouldn't say that, but I don't think the gap is the Grand Canyon.
I said the SEC is way more top heavy than the ACC, and I'm not disputing that. But body for body, top to bottom, I'm not sure that they're a better conference.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it's just depending on who you ask. And if we're going to make this about the SEC every year, then why not just have their own thing then?
Well, the only reason I asked that is because you compared them to Georgia being in the same situation. That's the only reason I asked.
Yeah, because I think an undefeated Georgia is different than an undefeated Florida State, but I think a one-loss Alabama is.
I was only saying that if Georgia lost their best player, their quarterback.
No, I get what you're saying, but you compared the two. That's why I asked the question.
Yeah, obviously the ACC is a lesser conference. I think, I don't know. You could go argue back and forth on it. I don't know that I'm willing to admit that. It's just the bias of national television. And you have guys like Paul Feinbaum. Well, Georgia went back to back. Well, that's because Georgia pays guys out the wazoo, and
they play 4 cupcakes a year on top
exactly.
of Vanderbilt, and Tennessee's not any good. Tennessee's still being ranked as a travesty, especially over a team like Utah. They're the same team, except Utah's better.
I think now that we're talking about this, I'm kind of rooting for Bama to win Saturday, just so I can be happy when Georgia gets left out. Because I do think people underestimate how much conference championships matter.
But they keep saying the 4 best teams. Fuck off, dude.
If Alabama wins, I think it's Michigan. I think it's Alabama. I think Florida State, and then a toss-up between Texas and Oregon.
To me, I like where your head's at. It worries me because I feel like It shouldn't be the case, by the way. I'm not lobbying for this, but it feels like there's a better chance for them to say, well, we're going to put in both Georgia and Alabama because we
No
think they're the
way.
4 best teams.
It matters when you lose. Like, obviously, Bama lost week 2, and that's a great time. But you can't lose your conference championship and still get in, I don't think. Not
Like
in a
if you're in
year
the
like
SEC,
this.
you might be able to.
TCU did it last year.
Hell no.
TCU did do it last year.
Well, that's just because I don't think there was a better option, was there?
No.
Yeah. And I think that this is all going to be figured out by this time
This
next
is-
week. Like,
I don't know. We've been saying that for like a month now, and there's still 6 viable teams.
yeah.
I think the playoff committee needs Florida State to lose, and they need Georgia to win.
You know what's going to be? I'm going to
Yeah.
say something crazy that you guys are going to fucking cream over. Louisville had a look ahead spot last week.
Let's go. we got him. We got him.
Nope, it's bullshit. Got your dumbasses. Fucking pranked.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right, Tyler. I've never been more proud to admit it.
The fact that he even needed to bring that up, Brandon, is a win because now it's in his mind.
It's in his head. He's thinking about it.
Or not, it's in his stupid little mind.
Well, perfect, fellas. That's all I had for tonight. Anything else I'd like to wrap up before we head into conference championship week? Should be a good time.
Go Big Red.
You guys got any crazy upsets that you want to call?
SMU over Tulane.
Ooh.
That's just the craziest.
I got Bama
thing
over Georgia. Give me the chaos.
Yeah, give it to me. Yeah, I'm in. Perfect.
No,
Go Big
I know.
Red.